After 3 months of emotional exhaustion post-breakup, I'm haunted by my ex's words. "You're the most fearful man I know, and I can't raise a child with someone like you." I'm struggling to rebuild myself after being drained and belittled. How do I start feeling worthy again? TLDR. It has been almost 3 months since my relationship ended, and I have only felt more emotionally drained as time goes on. While dating my ex, I was balancing school work and trying to build a career in screenwriting, yet I still made time for her. The relationship was emotionally taxing, and I ignored early signs that it was not working. Things worsened around the time of my uncle's memorial, who was killed by police during the pandemic. Conversations with my ex about my fear of law enforcement, anxiety, and how I navigate the world as a cautious and hyperaware person led to deeper emotional strain. She often criticized my demeanor and compared me to other men, making me feel that my caution and trauma were burdens rather than valid experiences. Socially, I felt out of place around her friends and began experiencing panic attacks at work. When I finally broke up with her, she reached out, and we tried therapy, but she placed most of the blame on me and never truly acknowledged her own behavior. In most of my relationships, I have been the one giving more. I struggle with feeling that I must prove my worth through effort and generosity. After being cheated on and experiencing homelessness in a previous relationship, I thought I was ready to try again, but I clearly was not. Now I am dealing with intense self-consciousness, feeling isolated, and doubting whether I am even worthy of dating without a stable career or emotional security. People have asked if I am neurodivergent because of my reserved demeanor, and while I am often described as safe or funny once I open up, it rarely leads to meaningful friendships. I am trying to stay focused on school and my goals, but grieving all of this while lacking support is deeply exhausting. Here is the full breakdown. This will be a lengthy post, 24 paragraphs, so I apologize in advance. I want it to be thorough, but I also understand that people have their own obligations and may not have time to read the entire thing. I have done my best to provide a comprehensive picture of what I have been dealing with while cutting out unnecessary details. It has been nearly 3 months since my last relationship ended, and instead of feeling lighter, I have become more emotionally exhausted with each passing week. That relationship took a significant toll on me. While dating her, I was also a full-time student, working close to 40 hours a week and fully committed to building a career as a screenwriter. I devoted any free time I had to her. I wish I could say the relationship was always warm and easy, but it was not. About 40% of the time, it felt like there was always something new that heightened my anxiety. I felt as though I could never truly relax. I also recognize that part of this is on me. I am responsible for not ending things sooner. If I had ended the relationship when things began to deteriorate, I would have spared myself a great deal of unnecessary pain. I am writing this because I am seeking advice or perspective on how to get back on track. I am aware that I am in the thick of it, so outside insight might help. I am in therapy, but talking to someone for an hour every 2 weeks has not provided me with the clarity I need. I have included a TLDR at the beginning for anyone who does not want to read the entire post, but for those who do, I appreciate you taking the time. I did not understand the severity of my anxiety until I dated her. I have always been a cautious person. I stay aware of my surroundings and pay attention to individuals who may be in distress. I tend to err on the side of caution when I drive, especially if someone else is in the car. My ex would often express how irritating it was to ride with me and would sometimes joke about wanting to harm herself because I was not aggressive enough on the road. I explained to her that when someone else is driving, they are responsible for your safety, and I take that responsibility seriously. My priority is always to ensure that everyone gets home safely. I have always been the type of person who looks out for others and notices things that others might overlook. Ensuring that the people around me feel safe, especially the person I am dating, has always been important to me. There was a pivotal moment in our relationship that triggered a new level of social anxiety for me. It occurred during the first week of September, just a few days before my uncle's memorial service, which was held on the 7th. He was killed by the police in Las Vegas during the COVID years, and due to the pandemic, my family had not been able to hold a proper service until that time. At my family's first reunion in over a decade, two of my aunts asked if my girlfriend would be attending after I mentioned her. When I told her, she happily accepted the invitation. A few days before the memorial, she told me she wanted to discuss my fear of the police. She asked if I would always feel that way. I thought it was a peculiar question, especially since we are both black and fully aware of how law enforcement often treats people who look like us. She said she had observed how my energy would shift whenever I saw police nearby. She described me as becoming tense and alert, which made her feel anxious. My family has had numerous encounters with police brutality, including one incident I witnessed personally. I explained that to her, but she expressed concern about how anxious I became around officers. Her father had been a police officer, and she believed that not all of them were dangerous. She also mentioned that some individuals provoke the police and escalate situations, which made me extremely angry. I had seen the video of my uncle being killed. He did nothing to justify what was done to him. I told her I understood that there are officers who try to do their jobs correctly, but my concern was about the lack of accountability when things go wrong. She said she did not want to raise a child with someone who might pass on that kind of fear or hatred. I responded that I hoped our child would never have to experience what I had and that they would grow up in a neighborhood where those fears were unnecessary. A few days after the memorial, she asked if I felt any sense of closure. I told her yes and explained how good it felt to see my family come together to honor my uncle. I also mentioned that I felt sad. My uncle was a flawed man who made many promises he could not keep. Witnessing him die on video introduced a type of grief I had never encountered before. When I mentioned that the video of his death was from the COVID years, she paused and apologized. She told me she had thought he had died when I was 12, and that if that had been the case, she felt I should have already moved on. She admitted that if she had known it occurred more recently, she would have responded differently and that she felt terrible for what she had said. She recognized that she was out of line and regretted it. A day after my birthday, 13th of September, we discussed the comedy show she had taken me to. During the event, a woman in the audience was visibly intoxicated and kept interrupting the comedians. At one point, she even tried to grab the microphone. I mentioned afterward that I felt uneasy and was concerned it could have escalated into a confrontation. On the way to her friend's daughter's birthday party the next day, she brought up how intoxicated the woman was, and I responded by mentioning my discomfort with how things turned out. She asked why I always assume situations will end in violence. I told her I do not always think that, but at times it seems like a reasonable concern. She said I was the most fearful man she had ever met and that my anxiety frustrated her. She compared me to other men in her life, saying they did not perceive the world in the same way. She also stated that her family, her father, and friends had noticed how anxious I seemed, and that I often assumed the worst when situations felt off. I asked why it bothered her so much that I was hypervigilant, especially since I was not harming anyone or taking it out on others. She did not answer because we had just arrived at the country club where her friend's parents resided. The place was clearly affluent, and although I had been around wealthy people before, I felt completely out of place. I was respectful and polite, shook hands, made eye contact, but internally I felt frozen. I had never felt so aware of how I was being perceived. I remember one man laughing about losing $15,000 betting on a Bears game. I could not relate to anyone there and felt like I had nothing of value to contribute. I also had little interest in attempting. It takes me time to become comfortable around new people, and it felt like there was an unspoken pressure to perform. After a few hours of attempting to socialize, I began feeling lightheaded. When she asked if I wanted to play pool, I realized I could not even concentrate. I was seeing double for the first time in my life. She told me to sit down while she informed everyone we were leaving, but I still got up to thank the hosts before we departed. In the car, I started hyperventilating but managed to keep it together just enough to avoid spiraling. When I calmed down, I explained how I was feeling. She said she did not understand why her frustrations affected me so much and that she was only trying to raise valid concerns. She told me it was the second time I had come across as awkward or distant around her friend and said that was not a good impression. She emphasized how important it was for her partner to get along with her friends. I told her that while I am not naturally outgoing, I can be warm and sociable once I feel comfortable. We talked for another 30 minutes, mostly while parked outside her house. Before we exited the vehicle, she said she did not know what she would do about our relationship if I could not get along with her friends. I ended the conversation there because I did not want to say something I would later regret, but I was angry. That tension persisted into the following month through her Halloween party. I began resenting her and became curt with her during certain conversations. At one point, I told her I did not think she believed in me, mostly out of frustration. Later, she admitted that she did not think I could get along with her friends and apologized for it. By that point, I was already irritated with her but chose not to escalate things. I hoped that if I let it settle, things would return to normal. Around this time, I started having panic attacks at work. I was working in the warehouse department of a retail store, which minimized my interactions with customers. Eventually, I began to notice how afraid I was to engage with people in general. It felt ridiculous to be experiencing this at 28 years old. I was aware that it was connected to my anxiety about how others perceived me, but I had no idea how to stop it. The panic attacks sometimes occurred multiple times a day. After a while, I started avoiding going out to restock the sales floor. I knew it had become serious when I had a panic episode in the store restroom and remained there while my coworkers searched for me for over an hour. I came close to receiving a verbal warning, but one of my coworkers covered for me and helped smooth things over. A few weeks later, I finally reached a breaking point. After a conversation about preferences where my ex admitted that I did not align with many of hers, I spiraled and broke up with her. She reached out later that night and I caved. She said we could work things out and I agreed to give it another chance. I felt that if we were going to have a real opportunity, we needed external assistance, so I contacted a few affordable couples therapists. During the first of 4 consultations I scheduled, the therapist asked us what we each felt was the primary issue in the relationship. I explained my concerns, but when it was my ex's turn to speak, the first thing she said was that she felt like she was giving 90% while I was giving 105%. The second thing she said was that she could never reassure me enough. That upset me. It felt like she was placing the blame for the relationship's stress entirely on me. She had contributed significantly to that stress, and those things had accumulated over time. I had hoped she would recognize her part in it and be willing to address those issues, but that never came to fruition. In most of my relationships, I have been the one who gives more. Outside of 2 long-standing friendships, I have usually been the one putting in the effort. For me, it never felt like a burden. It simply felt like doing what needed to be done. If I wanted to see my friends, I made the drive. If someone could not afford a meal and I still wanted to spend time with them, I paid for it. Over time, I have had to pull back and become more mindful of how I allocate my time, energy, and money to avoid overextending myself. Even now, I continue to struggle with this dynamic. I am actively unlearning the belief that I must constantly give something in order to prove my worth. Near the end of our relationship, she began sending me mixed signals. One day, she came to my house to help set up the Christmas tree and brought my grandmother her favorite coffee from Trader Joe's. A few days later, she invited me to volunteer at her parents' church giveaway, but did not acknowledge me or show any affection during our time there. She kept sending me pictures of her spending time with friends and remained in contact until she left for a family trip to Texas. Before she departed, I told her I would miss her. She responded with, "We should focus on what will bring us the most excitement for right now." I hung up on her, which was completely out of character for me. Later, she texted to say she was overwhelmed. What hurt the most was that she did not wish me a happy new year. 6 days later, she messaged me expressing how much she loved me, how excited she was for the year ahead, and attached photos from her trip. A week after that, she broke up with me. This happened right after I dropped off her Christmas and Valentine's Day gifts. Deep down, I had a feeling we were not going to make it to Valentine's Day. At that point, I was a mess. I would wake up in cold sweats with heart palpitations. My anxiety was through the roof, and I have more gray hairs than I know what to do with. I am just exhausted. I do not see myself dating again for a long time. Right now, I do not even feel worthy of being in a relationship. I am not where I want to be in my career, and I keep reflecting on the flaws my ex pointed out. It is not just about her either. In the relationship before this one, I was cheated on twice and ended up homeless. When I finally got back on my feet, I thought I was ready to try again. Looking back, I was not. The main issue I am facing now is that I am still self-conscious around others, and I tend to minimize my interactions with people because of it. Last year, a few individuals asked if I was neurodivergent because of my awkward and monotone demeanor. That has stayed with me. I worry that people either think I am strange or have already formed opinions about me. People often compliment me on how safe I make them feel or how funny I am once I open up, but it rarely leads to meaningful friendships. That lack of deeper connection has made getting over the breakup even more challenging. I do not genuinely have the support system I need to make this transition any easier. I have been trying to stay focused on school while also working toward other goals and giving myself space to properly grieve. But honestly, it is exhausting. For anyone who has gone through something similar, how did you manage to get through it? What helped you recover emotionally, rebuild your confidence, or feel like yourself again? Also, what can I do right now to reduce stress or lessen my chances of burning out? Any advice would be appreciated. I just want to reiterate how grateful I am to anyone who took the time to read all of this. Whether you respond or not, I genuinely appreciate it. I hope you all have a great day. Story 2. After 20 years, my friend and I had become emotional anchors, but I felt like a backup boyfriend. When I confessed my feelings, I suggested we take space. A month later, she excluded me from her birthday and acted cold. I'm barely speaking to her seemed like a warning. Am I losing her for good? I have been struggling with a very painful friendship situation and would greatly appreciate some outside perspective. A friend who is 37 years old and I, a 39-year-old male, have known each other since our teenage years, over 20 years ago in our country of origin. Back then, we were more like acquaintances. Years later, we both ended up living in a different country and we reconnected. In the last 10 to 12 years in particular, we became much closer. I offered her a place to stay whenever she visited before moving here and even allowed her to live with me temporarily. Our friendship flourished from there. We talked constantly, spent time together often, and for a while I genuinely felt we were each other's emotional anchors. However, over time, I began to feel that the emotional support and loyalty were becoming one-sided. I was always there when she needed something, when plans fell through with others, or when she was going through a difficult time. But I started to realize that when I needed her, she was not showing up in the same way. I began to feel like I was becoming a fallback person or even a backup boyfriend, rather than an equal friend. I developed deeper feelings for her and expressed my concerns about the imbalance in loyalty. She did not reciprocate, which I had already anticipated, but she was very kind about it, reassured me of our friendship, and even praised my honesty. Because I did not want to complicate or make her uncomfortable, she has mentioned before that she ends friendships once someone shows romantic interest in her. And to give myself time away from her to distance myself from those feelings, I suggested either taking some space or ending the friendship altogether. Initially, she did not seem to think either was necessary, almost making me an exception to her rule, only saying that it left me with a question mark in terms of how to explain our relationship to a future boyfriend. However, she agreed to a short period of no communication more about having a hard reset where we were not talking almost every day as if we were a couple. My hope was that with time, we could find our way back to a more balanced friendship. She reassured me that I was important to her and that we would be fine. When I reached out, as we had agreed, about a month later around her birthday, she was acting oddly. She thanked me for the message but did not want me at her birthday celebration because she was not ready to socialize in a group setting just yet. Still, she said she valued my friendship and wanted to speak one-on-one the following week to get back on track. That talk kept getting postponed for weeks. Meanwhile, I saw her making time for others, hosting gatherings and clearly engaging socially, just not with me. It was hurtful, and I felt as if I had been cast out of an entire social group because of it. She is somewhat the queen of her clique, which she has impressively managed to form quite quickly despite still being relatively new here. When we finally did talk, during the week of my birthday, she seemed cold and distant, despite claiming to still want to be friends. She contradicted past statements she had made and even lied about details I knew to be untrue. She never really offered a genuine reason for her behavior. It was the first anniversary of my father's passing the week prior, and she did not even want to hug me. Instead, she almost suggested that my not being invited to certain events was either accidental or justified because they were dinners or parties in honor of someone else, even when it was a mutual friend who had attended my birthdays, which I did not feel was a good enough reason. It felt like she had emotionally checked out long before I even realized something was wrong. I suppose I also somehow forgot to ask the most straightforward questions about why this was all happening and whether I had done something wrong, hoping that she would simply be honest and say it was due to something I said or did, or that she had changed her mind and needed to distance herself from me. The most she said was something about how no one in her life but me had made her feel bad about not spending enough time together, to which I pointed out was untrue because of a female friend of hers complaining about the same issue. Her response to that felt like the most genuine thing she said all evening. Yeah, and I'm barely speaking to her at the moment either because I got fed up with it. So is this all punishment for that? I do not know. I left the conversation more confused than before. She mostly said nice things suggesting reconciliation, yet her actions were pushing me away. I have been wondering, could this be self-sabotage? I have been engaging in a lot of self-reflection. I recognize that my feelings may have made me more emotionally invested, and I am aware that friendships can shift. However, it hurts to feel like I was quietly phased out, especially after everything I gave and how much I valued the bond we shared. I even feel replaced by the people I introduced her to, with whom she has become closer. I am now at a standstill. Do I confront her about the inconsistencies and how much her recent behavior has hurt me? Or do I sweep it under the rug and try to mend things on her terms? Or do I let go and seek closure on my own? The friendship is more important to me than a romantic relationship. Part of me still hopes the friendship can be repaired. Another part questions if I was holding on to something that was not mutual for a long time. If anyone has gone through something similar, how do you know when it is time to walk away? And is it ever worth trying for closure again? Summary: I reconnected with an old acquaintance and became close friends after moving countries. I developed feelings and took space to preserve the friendship, but when I reached out again, she began acting cold, excluded me from activities, and seemed to have emotionally distanced herself. I am uncertain whether to confront her or to let go quietly.